Hello there, welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. How are you doing? I hope you're doing remarkably well. So before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell and the thumbs up, and let's get started with part 3 of our story. It was the unsettling noises that Prudence heard at night that had disturbed her peace and had impromptu robbed her of a good night's sleep. The relentless rattling of old pipes, the creaking of the staircase, the belligerent groaning of the taps. By all accounts, Prudence's impressionable mind had become a fertile breeding ground of activating the suggestions of her zealous imagination that appeared to be stirred up by those prominent discombobulating noises that she frequently heard. However, it was the airy sounds coming from the attic directly above her head that had brought on disturbing feelings of great disquiet for her. It sounded as if someone with ponderous, heavy feet, wearing combat boots, was stomping around the roof, walking up and down, thump, 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 bang, thump, 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 bang, she would hear over and over again. "What's the matter?" asked Kyle, when alarmed Prudence began to shake her husband awake vigorously out of his languid slumber, which he didn't appreciate, given he was a deep sleeper. He grumbled warily, opening his eyes very slowly. "What is it, Cupcake? Can't you get any sleep?" he asked her. He sat up in bed to study his wife through quizzical, rather narrowing eyes. He couldn't help but think she looked like a deer caught up in headlights. "My goodness gracious me, Cupcake! What on earth is wrong with you? You're shaking like a leaf. Your face is as white as a ghost. What's the matter?" Prudence, in a quiet whisper of inaudible words that made her look like a startled goldfish, pointed suggestively towards the ceiling. "The attic," she whispered, her eyes widening in terror. "I think someone is walking up and down in the attic. They're making one hell of a noise. It sounds like combat boots beating against a wooden floor. It's creeping me the hell out. Listen, will you, Kyle? Listen. You have to believe me. I think the house is haunted, unless someone has broken in and decided to rob us of all the abandoned stuff that's left in the attic, which leaves only one thing. It's got to be a ghost." "I'm listening," said Kyle. "But I'm sorry, Cupcake. I don't hear anything at all. Maybe you're having a lucid nightmare. But if you're hearing noises, it's not a ghost, I can assure you of that. I warned you about the old pipes in this house. They can make clanging sounds. Old houses are notorious for making strange, idiosyncratic noises, Prudence. I'm afraid you're going to have to get used to it." It was so typical of her husband to react so insouciantly, Prudence thought to herself in annoyance. The moment she'd woken her husband up, the stomping sounds in the attic had stopped, almost at once, as if whoever was walking up and down was toying with her, with the full malicious intention of scaring her half to death, and it was working. Kyle falsely presumed she was having a nightmare. Either that or she was making a mountain out of a molehill, when it came to the inexplicable noises in the attic. Prudence knew differently, of course. What she had heard was something that warranted investigation, and the sooner she found out what was going on in the attic, the better. She needed to get to the bottom of this enigmatic mystery. Maybe there was indeed a rational explanation for the clamouring around she heard at night. It could even be down to rats that had set up shop in the attic, which would mean the strategic, careful placement of traps was well in order. If the noise was not due to rats, she would certainly take her mother's advice almost at once and call out a psychic to the house. "You're right," she said gingerly. "Maybe it was just nothing." She promptly decided when she awoke in the morning, while her husband took one of the work days away from Oakwood Rise for his twice-weekly commute to New York, she would use his absence as the quintessential opportunity to boldly ferret around in the attic herself to find out what really was going on, which was why she found herself climbing the ladder into the loft, with a sense of careful purpose. She hoists her wraparound dress around her thighs, nervously peering into the dark abyss of this unwelcome attic, as if looking through a whale's mouth, with seemingly no beginning or end. It's so easy to get lost in this tenebrific, charmless void. Her two beloved, incorrigible schnauzers are peering up at her with dark, curious eyes, as if they thought that there was a game in all of this somewhere along the line. Maybe an old ball lying buried beneath a carpeting of thick, congealed dust, perhaps, lost and forsaken for over 100 years, would suddenly make a rebounding reappearance and come bouncing down from beneath the rafters so that they could happily chase it through the house. She enters the dark, dingy loft, bottom first, swinging her legs up behind her. It's chilly, really creepy in here. She feels around rather blindly for the light string, pulls the long dangling switch, illuminating the dark space with a welcome warm orange glow. Prudence begins to navigate her way cautiously through a labyrinth of boxes piled high on top of each other, like giant bricks with dusty cardboard lids that are half open like hungry mouths waiting to be fed. This is the graveyard of our home, she supposes, the place where things you once loved and treasured have been laid to rest. She stares at the forsaken space before her that time has forgotten, and listens carefully, drawing in her breath tightly to her chest. She hopes to hear the scurry of tiny little padded feet rushing around the eaves of the attic, but all is very still, disappointingly so, and incredibly quiet, as if nothing is there. And yet in this confined, claustrophobic space she feels as if she is not alone. Hold it together, she tells herself firmly, coughing out some of the dust she's breathed in, that is clogging up her lungs. When last did anyone come up here in the attic, she wonders? It must have been an awfully long time ago. It would seem her scrutinizing eyes quickly find the evidence that she's seeking, rather like a forensic expert looking for the subtle signs and clues that will lead to the perpetrator of the crime. Gotcha, she says to herself proudly, as she discerns a plethora of rat droppings and sprays of urine scattered all over the place. Could the rats and their nightly scavenging be the haunting, airy sounds she is hearing at night, downstairs in her bedroom, that sounds like a man with combat boots thundering around the attic above her head? It would seem so. She notices that when she walks herself around in the attic, her footsteps seem to be exaggerated. They echo throughout the house, so a light, insignificant sound becomes 1,000 times more intimidating, so that a little padded footstep sounds like an ominous drum roll of thunder. She supposes the enigmatic, mysterious walking around she hears at night must indeed come from the rats, and the relief she feels about this is immeasurable. This is a problem easily resolved, that certainly does not require the ardent help of an exorcist from the Catholic Church, nor the visitation of a psychic or shaman. Although getting rid of these rats may require a heavy-duty exterminator of sorts, and she's not sure her husband's up to the job, judging by the quantity of rat droppings that she's observed, for there are more rats up here than she cares to even consider. She opens one of the cardboard boxes with a measure of curiosity, rather worried that a rat might bounce out from the container to give her the fright of her life. The bedraggled box contains a tangle of old Christmas decorations, from tinsels in gaudy shades of red, silver, blue, gold and green, to old wooden decorations handcrafted in Austria, where the original colourful paintworks have frayed at the edges, then their glass baubles that are cracked and broken. Another box contains the headless corpses of old Barbie dolls, plastic legs, arms and torsos that are now lying in beleaguered, forlorn funeral piles, with their vast selection of clothes lying scattered around them. Prudence wonders rather curiously which little girl they actually belong to. She finds a box of plastic dinosaurs and snakes, which she imagines probably belong to her husband. There are school books, scrapbooks, old toys, leather-bound photo albums that are falling apart at the seams. Then there are piles of old dusty letters, tied together with red ribbon, all addressed to Kyle's grandfather, and from the address at the back she concludes that they are love letters written to his grandfather from his own grandmother. She's secretly impressed by how long the letters are. The envelopes are thick to the touch. It makes her feel rather ashamed that she can only write a couple of sentences in a text, at the very most. She finds hundreds of photographs crammed up in an old dusty basket bag. One of the boxes appears to contain a vast selection of children's drawings, all done in crayon. This is curious. Prudence's heart begins to flutter with excitement. She loves looking at children's drawings. At one point in her life she had seriously considered becoming a kindergarten teacher. She had learnt that children express themselves through their artwork. Drawing is a tool used by psychologists around the world to learn about how the child sees the world from her perspective. She smiles when she sees her husband's childish scrawl, with his name in big letters, written haphazardly underneath the drawings. How terribly cute, she thinks to herself. Kyle must have done these as a boy. I've got to take a look at these. She gathers the drawings together in her hand, glancing swiftly through them one by one, her eyes popping wide open in surprise. She's confounded by what she sees. She was expecting to observe the traditional drawings that a kid would lightly draw. A sun in the sky, perhaps. A couple of stick figures. A house, a rainbow. A few birds flouncing around in the sky. But that is not what she's observing now. What the hell, she thinks, taking a closer look to examine the pictures. One picture, after another, shows a distinctive humanoid hairy creature with a pyramid-shaped head, ponderous shoulders, robust, powerful torso, overlong arms, with big yellow eyes. The Bigfoot is standing between two trees, staring at the farmhouse. One picture shows a Bigfoot holding the hand of a small stick figure that Prudence imagines must be Kyle. They are standing by a large body of water. The little stick figure is carrying two large fish in his hands by a string. All the pictures are named Azenka. Prudence is sure her husband has drawn the pictures of a Bigfoot he has inexplicably chosen to call Azenka. She gathers the pictures together to show Kyle when he returns from work later in the evening. She wonders if he has any recollection of drawing these pictures and what they could potentially all mean. Did he have an encounter with a Bigfoot when he was little, she wonders. It would explain the drawings. Kids didn't randomly draw things for no apparent rhyme or reason. They tended to draw things that they were exposed to in their environment. She had been married to Kyle for 5 years now, and never once did he mention the subject of Bigfoot to her. Prudence stacks a handful of the drawings in her hands, and awkwardly makes her way down the step ladder, with a careful descent, to ensure she doesn't lose her footing, given she is notoriously accident-prone. Her 2 excited dogs are waiting at the bottom of the steps, looking at her with an eager expectation. They appear visibly disappointed, when all Prudence has to show for her indulgent soiree in the attic is a selection of rather warped-looking drawings. There is no ball in her hand, nor an old teddy bear that is dying to be ripped apart by a spirited pair of jaws. Sensing her dog's discord and bitter disappointment, she randomly throws out the word walk at them. The word walk is the go-to word to lift their spirits, so they bark excitedly in response to the promise that she has thrown at them. She leads them out of the house. They rocket through the yard towards the grove of trees, where Prudence takes them for their daily walk, so that they can indulge themselves in their whimsical canine fancies by giving the rabbits chase. Even if she took time to adjust to living here at Oakwood Rise, on a sprawling property like this, boasting groves of trees, a beautiful creek, a verdant meadow, her 2 schnauzers certainly have had no trouble in adapting to their carefree lifestyle. They've taken to it like 2 ducks to water. If she took them back to their confined apartment in Queens, they'd be none too happy. Prudence walks through the groves, reflecting over her husband's drawings, wondering if her husband had encountered a Bigfoot when he was a boy. "What do you mean?" asks Kyle, staring at Prudence in bewilderment, as he observes the pictures in crayon his wife presents him with. "See," she says calmly, "you drew these pictures yourself in crayon when you were little. They're actually signed by you. You've drawn a Bigfoot that you've called Nzenka. I wonder, did you have an encounter with a Bigfoot when you were a boy? Or are these drawings done by a little boy with an impassioned fixation on Bigfoot?"
"Give them to me. I need to see this," said Kyle abruptly, snatching the drawings from Prudence. "Where the hell did you find these?" he asked curiously, his brow furrowing with perplexment.
"They were in the attic."
Kyle frowned. "What were you doing in the attic on your own?" he said, sounding annoyed. "What if you'd fallen off the ladder, Cupcake? You know exactly what you're like. You're ungainly on your feet. The last thing I would want is for you to break your ankle again. Your mother would kill me if that happened. She'd say I wasn't taking good care of you."
"Well, I didn't fall, all right," said Prudence indignantly. "If you must know, I wanted to investigate the noises I was hearing during the night that were coming from the attic. Turns out we haven't got a ghost, but we've got a serious rat problem that needs nipping in the bud, or it's going to get out of hand. You have no idea how many rat droppings I found up there, and there was urine scattered everywhere. It was disconcerting to say the very least, but thankfully I can go to bed in peace, reassured there isn't a ghost thumping around in the attic."
"Honestly, Cupcake, what are you like? I told you there are no ghosts in this house, but you didn't believe me, did you? I blame your mother for this. That impossible woman with her far-flung ideas about things fills your mind with so much stuff and nonsense, and you gullibly soak it all up like a hungry sea sponge. Your mother crowns everything old with a fierce loathing. I have no idea what's wrong with that woman. Don't worry about the rats. I'll get the problem sorted out soon. Maybe we should adopt a couple of cats from the shelter to move in with us, who have a penchant for hunting. Those rats will move out of this place faster than you can say the word Jack Robinson. Do you know, when I was a boy, my grandfather had an old cat for over 20 long years. He was a black and white cat called Lemoncello. The cat ensured that there was not a single rat lurking around this place. He was quite the formidable hunter."
"That's not a bad idea, getting a couple of cats. I like cats, but then again, not all of them are hunters. We had a cat once. He weighed 1/2 a ton. We were lucky if he moved off the sofa. Rats could run amok around him all day, and he wouldn't have batted an eyelid. More to the point about those pictures you drew. Do you remember why you drew them? You have to admit it's strange for a kid to draw them, don't you think? Most kids draw rainbows, houses, and stick figures. But you drew a Bigfoot."
"I'm sorry, Cupcake. I'm as confounded as you are. It's also a mystery to me. I don't even think I had an interest in Bigfoot growing up. So why I would draw so many pictures of the critter, I honestly don't know. But even if I say so myself, the pictures are rather good. There's no doubt that I've drawn a Bigfoot in this picture. I'm holding the critter's hand and carrying a couple of fish in the other. How incredibly peculiar."
"Her," corrected Prudence. "I think Nzenka must be a girl's name. It's got a feminine ring to it, don't you think? I wish you could remember why you drew these pictures," she asked, looking frustrated. "Try and think. Surely your memory isn't that hazy."
"Sorry, Cupcake. I really don't remember drawing these pictures. Maybe you should ask my grandfather about them. He would likely know. After all, I must have drawn these pictures when I was staying here at the farmhouse. Otherwise, he wouldn't have found them in the attic. My guess is I must have watched a program about Bigfoots and begun to draw them. There must be a plausible, rather boring explanation as to why I drew these pictures. You know what kids are like when they get a fixation about something."
Prudence shrugged her shoulders nonchalantly. "Believe me, Kyle, there's more to these drawings than meets the eye. I know there is. I mean, I can't remember anything when I was 8 years old, I admit that. But I think you had an encounter with a Bigfoot called Nzenka. I really do. You were so young, you probably don't remember any of it."
"You're being ridiculous, Cupcake. I think I would remember an encounter with a Bigfoot. If these things are real, Sometimes you really have your head in the clouds imagining all this ghost stuff, and now Bigfoot. You do get carried away, Cupcake, if you don't mind my saying so. But then again, I love you for it.
Contrary to what you may believe, Kyle, ghosts are actually real. I saw one myself, remember? I told you about the woman in the schoolyard. That ghostly apparition gave me the confidence to stand up to the bullies at school.
So you say,
said Kyle dismissively. Much as he loved his wife, he did hate the way she got caught up with all these fanciful, fictitious theories. Maybe she should take up writing or something, to channel her wild ideas into a positive creative outlet. He blamed Prudence's exasperating over-the-top mother Meredith, who believed all old things were obviously haunted. He believed she had not been a good influence on any of her daughters' lives. 2 days later, where was this damn place, thought Prudence, feeling a peevish, rather fretful exasperation bubble up inside her. Honestly, she didn't have a great sense of direction at the best of times, and then her GPS had to give up the ghost at the most infelicious time. So much for technology. It can fail you when you need it the most. She impatiently slams her hand on the steering wheel in a piqued frustration and drops her driving down to a cautious crawl, in the vain hope that she won't miss the ambiguous turning in the road, which she was sure from her vague memory was around about here somewhere. Soon she hits pay dirt when she finds the road that she's looking for, that she so nearly overlooked, as the turning is heavily shrouded by sprawling canopies of lofty trees and rambling hedgerows covered with thorny appendages. The roads in these parts are so narrow and obscure, all badly signposted, they're easy to miss. It's like driving around in a maddening maze, where you can find no beginning or end. Thankfully she's found it, the turning in the road that she's looking for, that is familiar to her. She knows the old age home is somewhere around here. She's been to visit Boxman Galloway here before, with Kyle on a plethora of occasions, but it was Kyle who had driven them here. But regretfully she hadn't been paying close attention to the route. Boxman Galloway had chosen to live in an old age home, in the heart of the countryside, only an hour away from Oakwood Rise, as the idea of living in a city was repugnant to a nature lover like Boxman, who shunned all things suburbia. Oh, thank God, Prudence sighs with relief, as a large, white, imposing Georgian building comes into view, nestled happily on a sprawling flatland of verdant lawns, peppered with tall, lofty trees and tumbling beds of colourful flowers, intermingled with roses and rather showy, unabashful displays of leafy green and grey foliage. The parkland oasis is generously furnished with a plethora of wooden benches, where some elderly people are seated reading books, enjoying the views or talking cheerily among themselves. She observes a gardener, sitting stoically on the back of a tractor mower, driving across the lawn in a perfect straight line, to keep the grass in ship-shop shape. She privately admits he's certainly doing a sterling job. She can smell the pleasing nostalgic scent of freshly cut grass. There is nothing quite like it. Everything is meticulously maintained, and if the man driving the tractor mower is responsible for keeping the grounds looking this good, then Prudence would seriously like to abduct him, to transform the grounds at Oakwood Rise. I mean, this place has thought of absolutely everything. There's even a man-made waterfall here, where water crashes down a natural-looking wall of sculptural rocks into a kidney-shaped pond that is full of ubiquitous large specimens of colourful koi carp that swim happily among the buoyant white spray. She has to admit, as she glances around appreciatively at the glorious views, that if she was inhibited by physical limitations brought on by advancing age, that living in a place as idyllic as this wouldn't be half so bad, with the friendly staff, the excellent food, and the large choices of activities and entertainment on offer. What was there not to like about this place? Boxman certainly seemed to enjoy it here, and had made many good friends here. It was a beautiful day, with a gleaming sunshine sending its soft accents of radiant light over the white building, so it almost seemed to sparkle in the mid-morning sun. Prudence parked the car in the parking bay, strictly reserved for visitors, and purposefully climbed out of her very reliable white Volvo, removing the light leather briefcase she had brought along with her from under the seat. She made her way down the flagstone pathway, where railings had been erected to assist the mobility of the elderly. The front door of the building opened on its own accord as she made her approach. She gingerly navigated her way across the lush, ornate-looking carpet towards the reception desk. The young woman's disapproving, captious eyes travelled up and down Prudence's leggings and sweatshirt rather judgmentally, like one of those intrusive scanners you find at the airport. Prudence didn't know who she was, and didn't particularly care for the woman. Most of the staff that worked here were significantly older, and a lot more pleasant and friendlier than she was. "Who are you?" asked the girl abruptly, in a clipped tone of voice, raising a sardonic dark brow and giving Prudence a scathingly suspicious look. "Oh, hello there," said Prudence gingerly, managing a watery smile. "I've come here to see Boxman Galloway." The young woman frowned. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked tersely, tapping her pen on the counter. "Everyone has to have an appointment here at Glen Acres. Those are the rules. You're not allowed to just rock up here any time you like. The old people here need structure and routine in their lives. You can't go upsetting them by turning up here whenever you like." "Surely I don't need an appointment?" asked Prudence. "I just want to have a word with Boxman Galloway. He's my husband's grandfather. I won't be long, I can assure you of that." The woman scowled condescendingly at Prudence. She couldn't help but privately think, the young lady would have been pretty if she'd actually wear a smile once in a while. She wondered if her thoughts had been heard, as the young woman's scowl deepened, and she became very brusque and abrasive. "No, you can't pop in willy-nilly to visit Mr. Galloway. I'm sorry, but you can't," she said, caustically oscillating her arms around. "That's not how it works around here. We have rules that need to be followed. You have to make an appointment," she said bluntly, scolding Prudence in a patronizing tone of voice, as if she was a belligerent child that needed a good telling off. "Look, there's no need to speak to me like that," said Prudence indignantly, determined to stand up to this precocious brat. "Is there someone else I can possibly talk to about this? I need to see Mr. Galloway. It's important." "You're speaking to me, aren't you? I'm in charge here today," she said sharply, with an arrogant, cocky smirk developing on the corners of her lips. "You have to leave, I'm afraid. You can't possibly visit Mr. Galloway. But if you like, I can schedule an appointment for you to see him on another day that's suitable for him. That's the best I can do, I'm afraid. We keep our residents very busy here. You can't just pop in whenever you like. This is not a glorified train station, you know." She opened up a large diary and began to scroll through it. "You could visit him tomorrow at about 11:30. He's available then. That's the best I can do," she said. Prudence, overcome by a heated infuriation, banged the desk fiercely with her fist. "I'm not booking an appointment with a dentist here. I've come to see Mr. Boxman Galloway, and I'm not leaving until I do. You have no right to order me around. I don't know who you think you are." "What's going on here, Trudy?" asked an older woman circumspectly. She was in her 50s. She looked like a member of staff, and quickly approached the desk. "Is everything all right?" she asked gingerly, looking at Prudence apologetically. "This woman here," said Trudy, pointing at Prudence in an exasperated voice. "She wants to see Boxman Galloway. I told her she has to book an appointment first, but she won't listen. She's refusing to go." "I'm sure Boxman Galloway would love to receive a visitor, Trudy," said the woman prudently. "Sometimes it's good to bend the rules, you know. I'm sure Boxman would appreciate a spontaneous visit like this." She glanced at Prudence and gave her a wink. "I tell you what I will do. I will go and see if he's available, shall I? If I know Boxman, I'm sure he won't mind being disturbed. I saw him working on a jigsaw puzzle
with Jimmy Fallon about 10 minutes ago in the main living area."
"Thank you very much," said Prudence. "I really appreciate this." The young woman behind the reception desk was cursing under her breath, rolling her eyes. But Prudence ignored her, and moments later that was when she saw Kyle's grandfather, Boxman Galloway, who was 94 years old, and he genuinely didn't look a day over 78, although he did carry a walking stick with him wherever he went, as his right leg would sometimes break out in painful spasms. Mr. Boxman's face lit up like a Christmas tree when he saw Prudence.
"This is a lovely surprise,"
he said, sounding genuinely pleased to see her.
"This must be my lucky day. Do you fancy going out of doors into the garden?" He gestured encouragingly. "It's lovely sitting in the shade under one of those park benches on such a glorious day as this. We can have a nice chat. I have a sense that this isn't just an ordinary visit."
Before long, under the shade of a lofty tree that stretched out magnanimously over their heads like a large umbrella, Prudence explained the nature of her visit. She opened up her leather briefcase and pulled out the pictures that Kyle had drawn as a little boy, handing them over to the older man. Boxman looked curious, raising his bushy white brows above his kind blue eyes.
"What do you have here, Prudence?" he said, taking the pictures from her. "I'm intrigued. I knew your visit here was purposeful. Turns out my hunch was right."
"Kyle doesn't know I'm actually visiting you. I didn't tell him. But I found these pictures that he drew in crayon as a little boy. He has no memory of actually drawing them. I believe he's drawn a picture of a Bigfoot that he calls a Zenka. I asked him why he'd drawn these pictures, because I know that little children only draw what they really see in their environment. But he doesn't know. He has no memory of drawing them. He did mention that if anyone knew why he'd drawn them, it would likely be you, that you might be able to answer the question, which is why I came here today."
"Why are you so interested in this subject, Prudence?" asked Boxman curiously. "Do you have a passion for cryptic creatures or something?"
Prudence shook her head. "No, I've just got an inquiring mind. If I see something that doesn't make sense, I tend to search for the answers. I don't like it when the pieces don't fit. I'm pretty sure a young boy wouldn't randomly draw pictures of Bigfoot without good reason."
Boxman looked impressed. "Turns out, Prudence Galloway, that you're not just a pretty face," he chuckled. "That was discerning of you to reach such a conclusion. And I will tell you this, you're not wrong."
The old man fingered the pictures, his eyes lighting up with merriment, almost as if a distant memory had trickled into his mind.
"Where did you say you found these, Prudence?"
"In the attic."
"I haven't seen these pictures for years," said Boxman, studying them. "They're surprisingly good. Done in crayon, I have to say. I mean, an 8-year-old boy did this. Kyle was quite an artist. My word, this is a blast from the past, is it not? These pictures take me right back to some rather curious idiosyncratic memories that were beginning to fade. Let me see. Let's have a think here. Yes, these pictures must have been done about 20 years ago. Although my mind is not as sharp as it used to be, I think Kyle would have been about 8 years old at the time. He's 28 now, is he not? My wife was alive back then. She loved the bones of Kyle, would move heaven and earth for her beloved grandson."
"So why do you think Kyle drew these pictures, Mr. Galloway? Do you know?"
"Do I know? Of course I know. It's quite the story. Do you really want to hear it?"
"Well, I came all this way, didn't I? I had to get past that bloody-minded young lady in reception. So if you'll tell me the story, I'll be absolutely fascinated."
"Oh, Trudy, you mean her. She's a piece of work, that young lady is. She's the owner's daughter. Seems to delight in bossing everybody around."
So there we are. That's the end of part 3. Part 4 is tomorrow night, and I look forward to you joining me then. Until next time, goodbye and good night.